Hello? Alrighty, it's time. My mic is so loud and for what? We'll put it like here-ish, I think. That seems fine. That sounds fine. Just to check. Alrighty, so today we're gonna be doing some fun stuff. There were only 2 people here for my first stream, which I did not get a VOD of, unfortunately, because I didn't realize that you had to enable VODs. So, that is lost to the ages. But what we did, I will actually go ahead and show you guys real fast. 1 second. Let me pull it up. What we did last time on world building, was we built out Dakal. We built out the major cities. We built out some of the fun stuff about them, like the capital. And we did a little bit of building into the ocean and a little bit of lore on the merfolk that lie in this ocean over here, which is the same as this ocean over here. And yeah, we did a little bit of building on basically the culture and the architecture and the different things that you would see in the different cities. Oh, I should probably pull up chat. Give me 1 second, just in case. Un momento, so I can actually see you guys, perhaps. Do. Chat. Pop out chat. There. Now I can see you guys. Perfect. Okay. So, what we're going to be doing today is, and it's not going to be a super long stream because I'm exhausted. We're going to be building out the different cities and communities that are in Varshavaan. And so basically what this is going to look like is we're going to go ahead and I don't think this is supposed to be here. I know it was probably originally there, but I don't think I registered that it was there. So we may remove that later. We'll see if we decide to do something with it. But as you can see, I've basically mapped out what kinds of odd species, more of the monstrous species, live in Varshavaan and which ones have made their own little communities. And so basically what we're gonna do is go through and make some cultures to go along with them. We're gonna do cultures, we're gonna do maybe a little architecture if that's prevalent. We're gonna do maybe some traditions that these different species have that's different from everybody else. And yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of world building today, I think. So it's gonna be a little bit of fun. Un momento. Perfect. Maybe we put on the tavern music? Just for funsies. Second. Where is it? There she be. If I can function. Hello? There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop on into it. So the the one that I'm most excited about, where is it? No. Where is it? I can't remember where I put them. This one? Nope. Nope. Galta. Sola. Anti. Oh, see, gosh, where did I put it? Knolls, Goliath, goblins. this one I'm very excited about. So, there was this, I think it was like a Tumblr or a Twitter thread or something like that that I saw where people were basically like, goblins basically have a different system of morality, and I find that idea is so interesting about just the phenomenon of different cultures having entirely different morality systems based on their values. And like, let's look at like way back history, sacrificial offerings. Human life was valued in a way that was different from everywhere else, because they were offered essentially not an ascended death, but more of they were an offering to the gods, and it was more of a great honor than I think that we can comprehend nowadays, at least in their culture. So I love the idea of goblins having a different morality system in terms of stealing. So I think that they are not very possessive creatures, for one. I think that they borrow or really just take whatever is necessary for them that day. So you'll probably have a cooking spoon that 3 different families use depending on the day, or 3 different, I should say households, not families. And I also think that this idea would probably be also passed on to their view of children. And I think that it would be very much the village raises the child type situation. So I think, also, by the way, nobody told me last time that my audio was scuffed, which is sad because I was very excited about that music stream. So we may redo that in the far future. But for now, you gotta let me know if my audio is scuffed, because it makes me sad when it is. So, goblins. Basically, they find stealing or borrowing a very natural path to survival. There is an expectation in this community that your hairbrush will be gone one day, and you will take one from your neighbor before you need to assist with the field work that day. Likely the same one stolen from you in the first place. They are beings of convenience. And a community unlike any other. They're not territorial. They have no concept of family. This does not mean that they lack oneness. As many who do not practice the subject would say, it takes a village to raise a child. The children belong to everyone, and the stuff belongs to everyone, and thus everyone regards each other as family in a rather absurd way to those outside of the community. So, we're gonna do a little bit of writing today. Let's look at architecture. I can't imagine a community that shares things like hairbrushes and cooking utensils without knowing how those items are particularly cared for. I can't imagine that they would be extremely hygienic enough to where they're not riddled with disease, because obviously you would know that something's wrong. But I would also imagine that goblins have a higher disease constitution to everybody else, just because of there's a concept of how children, if you don't let them outside, you don't let them interact with germs, they're going to be very sickly when they're older. And I think that idea is probably held in the goblin community as well. But probably to a bit more of a everybody is at least somewhat dirty at any given time. So the children belong to everyone, and the stuff belongs to everyone, and thus everyone regards each other as family. So let's go ahead and think about how this would impact their housing situation. I would imagine that they would live in bigger homes that could accommodate multiple people. I would also imagine that it's rather polyamorous to some extent, if they regard like the children belonging to everyone, why wouldn't everyone belong to everyone, if that makes sense? Not belonging as in like ownership of, but belonging as in a part of. So I think that they would probably have large flat housing that can accommodate can accommodate can I spell? Did I spell that wrong? Oh, I didn't put 2 M's, my bad. Large flat housing that can accommodate many people. There was there's a game that I was running that's like, that was more of a non-serious game. And they all played like smaller species of characters, and they all jumped together at night and slept in a cuddle puddle. Is what my DM in my other game, but my player in this game called it. Where they all just like, you know, cuddled up and slept right next to each other. So more than likely there would be entire rooms made out of bed. And then probably separate like cooking rooms and rooming rooms, things like that. So, large flat housing that can accommodate many people. The majority of the space is likely taken up by bed, capitalized. I imagine that their language is probably a bit less separated. I don't know if they would necessarily have a lot of words for things that separate certain things. I think everything would have its own identity to some extent. At least that's what I feel in my brain. That's the vibe I'm getting. So large flat housing that can accommodate many people. The majority of the space is likely taken up by bed. There are separate rooms for food and I don't want to say hygiene because I feel like that emits a certain standard of hygiene in people's brain, but I guess hygiene is probably the proper place to put it, proper way to say it. So I imagine that their version of hygiene would be a little bit different from most other races. I would imagine that they're relatively hairless beings, because a lot of stuff can get stuck in hair. You can get tangled, it's a hassle. I don't know why you would, if you thought of things so simply and precisely to where everyone belongs to everyone is akin to everyone. I don't think that goblins would have a lot of hair, personally. But I guess hobgoblins, aren't they fuzzy? Hobgoblins. Or am I thinking of bugbears? I think I'm thinking of bugbears. A little bit of hair. We'll just say they're hairless, I think, is what goblins are. For the most part. Amon, hello! I like the little email, that's cute. How's it going? What are you up to? Do I need to be afraid of what you're planning? No, we are just doing some world building today. We are just looking at, we're looking at Varshavaan, which is, let me check. Okay, this autosaves. So we're looking at Varshavaan, which is like the Wild West of the species world. There's demons, there's goblins, there's minotaurs, there's all sorts of different beings. And so we're just going through and we are going to make some little, my brain is not working. we're making some cultures and the such for them. We are also going to be looking at like housing and things like that. So yeah, feel free to hop in and say whatever you'd like. I worked at a D&D character that is loosely inspired from the island of Dr. Moreau. I don't think I've heard of that. Can you describe it to me? The majority of the space is likely taken up by bed. There are separate rooms for food and hygiene, and I would imagine that privacy is a somewhat foreign concept to them. Like there's certain things that you just don't do in public spaces, but other than that, it's just, most of it is probably public to them. I don't think privacy is much of a concern to them. Privacy is not much of a concern to goblins in this community specifically. Of course, I want to leave a little bit of wiggle room for players who want to play goblin characters in the future. I want to make sure that they have a little bit of leeway in terms of deciding what their character is, how they interact with the world, that kind of stuff. So, is much of a concern to goblins in this community, and anything considered to be private is taken into the forest to be dealt with. Private. It is a novel that's from 1896 where a shipwreck lands on a secluded island and is cared to and healed from the assistance of the famous Dr. Moreau. I can't talk, bro. It's a rough day. Dr. Moreau? Oh, it's also a film. Interesting. A shipwrecked man rescued by a passing boat. A mad scientist. Human-like hybrid beings. Oh my god. Vivisection. So basically... Nice. Basically Frankenstein in people. The novel deals with a number of philosophical themes. Oh, there was, so... Me and my, I'm in security, so I'm in tech, so a lot of philosophy is kind of lost on a lot of tech bros, in this day and age. And it also doesn't help that, that the world is very much, enamored with the idea of the STEM fields. So me and my manager had a really cool conversation about emotional intelligence, and philosophy in the modern day when we as a society seem to value the STEM fields a little bit more than the humanities at this point. And it was just a really cool, conversation that we had. I just thought I'd share it. In the island, he later notices that the doctor seems to experiment on local animals to make them to humans through medical means. Later, adaptations shifted from vivisection to genetic manipulation. That's so interesting. I think the idea of genetic manipulation, as in removing or adding certain traits before something is born, is such an interesting wave of morality that I would love to see explored a little bit more. I know that, what is it? Galactica does a little bit of the genetic mutation idea. And is it Galactica? Galactica? I can't remember names of anything. Battlestar Galactica, is that correct? Bruh. Battlestar Galactica. What's left of human Cylons who killed? No, what is it? Galactica. I feel like it's something Galactica. Galactica something. Movie about genetic engineering babies. Gattaca! That's what it is. I watched that with my brother a million years ago, it feels like. And I think that idea is such an interesting concept because it's like there's the idea that people who have traits about them that are considered disabled, they're not like, they're obviously, I don't know if you believe in a higher power or not, but I personally don't particularly, but it's like these people are not necessarily born wrong, especially if they've learned to accept themselves and work around their disabilities or work with their disability. And the idea of genetically mutating people for cosmetic reasons is so outside of the purview of creating a essentially a humanity that is no longer sick. It's just so interesting that people would cosmetically engineer their babies to me. I think that's a weird wave of morality that I don't know quite where I stand on. It's like very obviously not okay to say certain things are beautiful and certain things aren't in terms of humanity and people, but it's such an interesting new wave of morality that I am scared of, frankly. So in my version, he's an artificer who uses mutated plants or strange mutated animals for his eldritch cannons and such. That's cool. I read from the Strixhaven setting the Witherbloom mascot and thought an insane scientist would have this amalgamation of different animals as a cute pet. That's so fun, actually. Moreau was planned as a flawed scientist who learned partly druidic spells and used it to engineer plant seeds to be his cannons at level 3 when he becomes an artillerist. Interesting. Cool. I like that idea. I love characters that push the boundaries on not only what's normal but what is moral. I'm interested, do you consider this character to be a good person or a bad person or neutral? His creations don't live for long, maybe for the better. Yeah, it might be a little rough to be, you know, stitched together and mutated. Privacy is not much of a concern to goblins in this community, and anything considered to be private is taken into the forest to be dealt with. I wonder what their morality would be in terms of death for goblins. Would they have burial traditions? I wonder. If we're going extremes to where everyone belongs to everyone, I think that there might be an element of cannibalism, not in and of the fact that people enjoy eating other people in the goblin community, but rather that when people die, you might as well reuse their bodies, if that makes sense. That's interesting. I think the goblins already have a lot of weird morality that I think might be a little jarring to those outside of the community, so I don't think adding another one is the best idea right now. A fire-breathing, small-sized plant is maybe a bit much for an ecosystem. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so goblins have Yeah, I think the cannibalism thing might be a little bit too much to add on to a group that already has such a different morality system. So let's go ahead and move on from, so we did housing and the concerns with that. We have, let's talk about food. I would assume they're omnivorous, at least in this community. And I would probably guess that they are not so much hunters rather than gatherers. So, gatherers slash gatherers slash scavengers. I don't think that they would be against taking like corpses of dead animals in the such that are not diseased, obviously, and that are obviously not rotting. Ooh, sorry, I'm tired. And I think that they would probably use that, like reuse dead animals that died of old age or what have you. I can't imagine that would be good for their metabolism. Yeah. Also, he creates them with the full intent to not last for long. That's so interesting. Does he consider himself to be good or evil? Does he consider himself to be essentially, does he think that his work is good in the long run? But rather gatherers, scavengers, they are not against taking already dead animals and creatures. I would say just creatures. Just to all encompass that. They're not against taking already dead creatures that are reasonably healthy, of course, that have died in normal ways, such as old age. Omnivorous, not so much hunters, but rather gatherers, scavengers. They are not against taking already dead creatures that are reasonably healthy, of course, that have died in normal ways, such as old age. And repurposing them for sustenance. I guess food is probably, well, food. I do want to capitalize their basic ideas, mainly because these people don't think of these already dead creatures as dead creatures rather than in the category of food. And why would you not use food as food? I don't think he's concerned with morality in the normal sense, but he tries to make some animal trade usable for others. So his goal is to create items that allow him or others to fly, swim, or other things that's not normally able for humans. Okay, so he's one of those people that are not concerned with the outside world and more concerned about humanity's development. That's interesting. They're not against taking already dead creatures. Okay. Misread that for a second. Would they use spices? I feel like they would use spices. Maybe. I saw a really fun headcanon about dwarves. That was basically like dwarvish food is to other creatures very bland and plain. And it's because dwarves are, poison doesn't really affect them as much as it does other people. And so a dwarves are basically like, well, I don't feel like killing the other races, so I'm just gonna make it without like our normal spices. And then there was a fun little thing at the end where it was like, one dude is like, do you think humans can eat salt? And he's like, no, it's a rock, of course they can't. And it was just a funny little tidbit. So I like stuff like that that's like a little weird. So let's look at goblins. Goblin 5e. Aww. Hello, Silly Pole. Thank you for following. I appreciate it. We're just having a little bit of fun. Feel free to hop in if you'd like to. I disagree that goblins are naturally evil. I disagree with a lot of the rulings in the monster manual. That things are naturally good or evil. I think that's just a stupid way of looking at morality, especially if you are thinking about different communities and their senses of morality. Are the items I looked up he would create to adopt animal abilities. Nice. Cloak of Elvenkind, Goggles of Night, Cloak of Protection, Cloak of the Bat, Cloak of the Manta Ray. So are these things that he would have made, or are these things that he would have picked up? Is my question. Okay, so they don't have a lot going on, honestly. They're supposed to be, black-hearted humanoids. I disagree. So let's look at Goblin 5e race stats. And just by the way, I know that Wikidot is saved for the most part. Oops, I clicked on something. Dexterity increase. Live up to 60 years, 3 and 4 feet tall, 30 feet. Fury of the Small. When you damage a creature, you cause the attack or spell to deal extra damage. It's equal to your level. Disengage or hide action. Dankwood Goblin are much like any other run-of-the-mill goblin, but they are more gentle and artistic than the savage and uncouth goblins of the world. They're inquisitive and have a magical bond with small forest creatures. That's adorable. I love that. Plane shift. Source. Adventure with Muck. Exilan. Plane shift. I have never heard of plane shift before. Interesting. Dankwood goblins. Size, speed, dark vision, speak with small beasts. I kind of like the idea of them being able to communicate simple ideas because their way of perceiving things is so quote-unquote simple as well. And let's look at this one. Climbing speed, interesting. Grit, you have resistance to fire and psychic damage. The Grolag, the Lava Step, and the Tuk-Tuk. Grotag. Smaller and weaker than their cousins. Though seldom with much success, they attempt to live by their wits. I think the way that people talk about goblins is so sad. What I often find sad is that they rarely explain why things are in the monster manual, what makes them hard to explain things in the background. Yeah, I agree. It's just so, like, why did they make the decisions that they did? I guess it's just because, like, in basically first edition and popular fantasy media, these things are portrayed a certain way, but I just feel like creatures that have a human-like intelligence, at least that we consider human-like intelligence, I think that it's disingenuous to pretend that they don't have a morality system and to pretend like they can't deviate from basically what they've been taught their whole life, because we see humans do that all of the time. By goblinoids, there was a giant part that isn't mentioned. Veteran's Cane was an example. He's a more frail older man, so to have a transmorphing cane be useful. The homunculus for this inventor also sounds nice. What not many knew was that goblinoids have a giant god behind them, but he's rarely mentioned. Yeah, so the gods in my world... Un momento. The gods in my world, let's go to Varia, the gods. So these are the gods that I have in my world. I've thought about adding more, but honestly, if I added more or I changed any of the gods, I would do it to be homebrew gods, personally. Because while I do like I think it's the Dawn War of the Dawn or something like that this list is mostly taken from. There are a few exceptions. Ilistrai and Mishakal being the two that I think are the exceptions. I just feel like if I were to change the gods, I would just make my own, personally. But I don't like the idea of there being gods of certain races. Which is why I've contemplated taking out Gruumsh, for one. It's why I've thought about replacing Corellon or Avandra or Melora with something else, because those are all Elvish ones. As well as Lolth, but Lolth serves a very specific purpose, in the Underdark specifically. And I've thought about... Well, I like the idea of Moradin being in Dwarf just because it's not necessarily about dwarves being dwarves, but more that dwarves are, according to their traditions, very creative beings, and I think the god of creation adds to that. I've thought about replacing Tiamat. I just don't I don't particularly find her or Bahamut to be very compelling characters, personally. I've also thought about replacing Torog. I've thought about replacing Zahir as well, because I don't really use them, and I would honestly rather create my own evil gods that have a little bit of depth to them, you know? I feel like a lot of the evil gods don't have a lot of depth to them. Goblinoids used to be Fae. According to what source? That's so interesting. The god who rules them now is a god of conquest, and he literally obtained the goblinoid through fighting the god that looked after them. Oh, that's interesting. I only found it sad that they cut so much of the descriptions of the monsters down in the books, because the small alignment shard good, bad, evil is a bit little when you cut all the context behind it. Yeah, I agree. I just think that you can't boil morality down to for the most part, I don't think you can boil down morality to good and evil. But on top of that, I don't think you can boil down what we consider humanity, even though it doesn't belong to humanoids, or to humans specifically in these source books. But I don't think you can boil down humanity to good and evil as well, personally. So, fun little morality stint, real fast. Let's go back to here. So, goblinoids... They don't have a lot. They don't have a lot, honestly, that's interesting about them. Let's do goblinoids D&D. Well, maybe we should look at Forgotten Realms. Yes, right here. Perfect. Goblinoids are closely related to humanoids, also known as goblins, not to be confused with the particular variety of the same name. Bugbears are goblins. And they are floofy. They are floofy. I would imagine that goblins, hobgoblins, and bugbears are three very different things. I don't think goblins have hair, for one. Hobgoblins are the in-between of a bugbear and a goblin, we'll say, and then the bugbear is like a floofy boy, I think. Alrighty, goblinoids had a typical human anatomy. Personality, let's see, sadistic, yeah, we don't care. Known for the habit of abusing those lesser than them, worshiping those greater than them. Well, exceptions did exist. Most goblinoids in the realms match this ethical description. Well, that's not how it's gonna work in my world. That's the fun part about being a DM, especially when you have crafted your own world, is that you get to just say, no, fuck you, to most of D&D. It makes it a lot of fun because you just get to make whatever you want. So all goblinoids now die and become minions of the god who owns them in the afterlife, so he literally doesn't care much what they do in the world of living. I mean, he only needs them as an army in the afterlife as a god of conquest. This god is really old and from Forgotten Realms. Yeah. I wonder if you're talking about maybe Bane? Because Bane is... Oh, I don't have it here. It's in my overview notes. As you can see, I'm behind on all things D&D at all given times. Bane, the god of war and conquest, militaristic nations of human goblins, specifically. Interesting. Yeah, so I think you are talking about Bane. With Grimsh, many of Bane's war priest clerics chose the domination domain. Never allow your fear to gain mastery over you, but drive it into the hearts of foe, punish insubordination and disorder. Hone your combat skills to perfection, whether you are a mighty general or a lone mercenary. So let's talk about, because there are some gods who created certain beings, like Moradin created the dwarves. I think it's Corellon who created the elves. I could be wrong. That may have been like a group project between him, Avandra, and Melora. In my brain, Melora is not elvish per se. Melora can change her looks, I think. I feel like that fits a little bit. But if we look at Asmodeus, for example, Asmodeus was created because he took on the traits of demons. So he was an angel who took on the traits of demons to fight them better. And I think that idea is very interesting. But I also feel like goblinoids do not have the celestial weight to do something like that, so a god would have had to create them. I just thought, so the god of love in my world is Mishkal. Bruh, hello? Control F, Mishkal. Goddess of love, compassion, healing, and restoration. I kind of like the idea of Mishkal creating the goblins. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like it. I feel like goblins, at least the way that we've created them in this little session here, I think that they kind of embody the idea of essentially loving everyone and everything as though it were your own, quite literally. And I kind of like the idea of them worshiping Mishkal a little bit. I think that's so much fun. That a DM has the last word in matter of world building is a thing. Yeah, actually there is a rule in the DM guide. Not that you need rules. Personally, I think rules are just suggestions for the most part in terms of making something fun. But if we're talking about the actual rulebook in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a little tidbit that's basically like, the world is your own, whatever you say goes. If you don't like a rule, change it, essentially. I think the goblinoids used to be Fae because they were born out of the subconscious nature of the Feywild. So there's actually, what are they called? Oh my god, I forget. Hang on, 1 second. They're called, they're like hang on, I have a giant book, a giant binder of all of the not all of, because it doesn't include the newer books, but a lot of the basically all the monster cards for all of the stuff. Howler, where did you come out of, bro? Where is my Feywild stuff? I actually think they're in another binder. I have multiple of these. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Oh, you know what? It's in my physical stuff. 1 second, 1 second. Haha! I found it! I found it! I found it! Okay, so there are these things from the Feywild that look a lot like goblins. Darklings, but they look more like gnomes to me. Redcaps also are more gnomish, frankly. But there's these guys, the Zvart. I don't know how to pronounce that. But they look a little bit like goblins. Redcaps look more like, they look, in terms of what Amon said in chat, I think that they look more like gnomes, don't they? You not think so? I don't know, maybe it's just like the classic version of like lawn gnome type situation, but the Darklings are like, a weird satyr combo, to some extent. It's very interesting. So that does track in terms of source. My rough theory is that not all of the old goblinoids traveled to the material world. Interesting. I also think that in terms of what I imagine goblins to be, those redcaps are a little too fluffy. They're a little too fluffy for me in terms of goblinoids. I got so distracted, dude. Some change through the fluid nature of the Feywild, because they need to change. Yeah. That makes sense. I don't imagine goblinoids to be alien enough or fantastical enough, honestly, to be from the Feywild. Redcaps have the same roots in mythology. Ooh, interesting. Redcaps mythology is a type of malevolent, murderous goblin. Okay, so these guys look more like goblins. Anglo-Scottish border, especially those that were the scenes of tyranny or wicked deeds, and known for soaking his cap in the blood of his victims. I like that, honestly. Why do redcaps wear iron boots? When a redcap is near to potential prey, it can close the distance quickly and get him viciously. Because of the boots, the stat block for the redcap lists this interesting feature. How are they born? It was reported that redcaps were asexual creatures that spawned by budding. So, like, through flowers. They did this only once or twice in their lives, growing a hump on their back for some 6 months. Interesting. It's a type of malevolous murderous dwarf in English and Scottish folklore. Murderous goblin. That's interesting. Redcap myths and lore wiki fandom. I wonder, are goblins and dwarves similar in mythology? Goblins live next to the humans in the same world, while dwarves live underground and only visit the upper world occasionally. Dwarves are just small men. Okay, interesting. Can be both malevolent and benevolent. We love to see it. And like all mythological beings, they have conflicting stories and origins when they are old enough. Yeah. Goblins are... Oh, gnomes are small. Okay, goblins are bigger. They can get big. Well, that's just rude. Violent and evil. Why not the young men? Tell me. Tell me why. Elves are similar to fairies, benevolent most of the time, but can be evil. Leprechauns are always seen as positive. They won't bring luck unless you give them a gift. They are capable of making the person they choose rich or happy. They are also believed to live in the country on the other side of the rainbow, where they are guarding their pot full of gold. But this place is unavailable for humans, and thus if you want some leprechauns gold, you gotta befriend one. Interesting. Okay, I got distracted. So distracted. Rarely got along with themselves better than their enemies. I disagree. I feel like everything in the Forgotten Realms ideas of goblinoids means that they would at least somewhat get together. Or not get together, get along. Hierarchy was usually determined by who would win a fight. It was not uncommon for them to find out through physical methods. I wonder what their hierarchy looks like. Their social hierarchy. I wonder what that looks like. History. To various goblinoid races were not native tutorial. They migrated to the world in small waves when they discovered portals leading to it. It was believed by some scholars that some of the goblinoid races were purposely bred by the hobgoblin race, who were often dominated goblinoid communities. Interesting. But to what end is my question? Monster Manual, 4th edition. Fifth edition, Jeremy Crawford. Interesting. From their description, I would assume they would follow the rule of the stronger one. See, that makes sense from the Forgotten Realms point of view, but in terms of what we have decided at least this community of goblins is, I think it would make more sense for the person who is most caring towards other people to be in charge of everyone. So if everyone belongs to everyone, stuff belongs to everyone, then the person who is nicest to the stuff and to the everyone would be in charge of the everyone, I think, to some extent. So if they meet a stronger enemy, they would not fight to solve destruction, but after the first blows, offer truce. I don't know how many fights this group of goblins would take. I wonder, so let's think about social hierarchy and then let's think about military or lack thereof. Did I really go backwards one? So let's think about social hierarchy first. So if everyone belongs to everyone, and the stuff belongs to everyone. I think we capitalize everyone and lowercase this everyone. And the stuff belongs to everyone. Then the person who cares and I would say cares for and is kindest to the stuff and to everyone is the leader. Ultimately, I don't think they would probably have a leader per se. They don't particularly have a leader, but rather an elder, I would say, quote unquote, that that settles disputes. It has the final say. Sat. An enemy doesn't mean to say as such. If the enemy doesn't see a reason for the betterment of both, the field is open for nasty strategies to stay alive. Do you mean to say that an enemy probably wouldn't see a lot of value in fighting this group of goblins? And on top of that, any being that would find it valuable to fight this group of goblins would go for nasty strategies to stay alive? Oh, from the viewpoint of a goblin group. Okay, I understand. Okay. So if the enemy doesn't see a reason for the betterment of both. Oh, okay, I understand. Okay. So essentially let's look up. For the most part, I like that idea actually. They would not take fights unless they don't, I would say. Sorry. They don't take fights unless they are in danger. But on top of that, they don't believe in quote-unquote honorable fighting. And then in addition to that, if the enemy is not willing to compromise for the betterment of both societies, then the Herta, is it Herta? Herta. It is Herta. Okay. Just double checking. Then the then I would say the everyone would find it in their I don't want to say nature, because nature implies that people are a certain way when they're born, but when I say nature, I mean like their nature that they've been taught as they've grown up. If you can't tell, I'm a big proprietor of nature versus nurture. I think nurture is a bigger part of the human condition than than nature is, personally. So I would find it in there. I guess this is really only for me to protect their society. Okay. Okay. I've lost some. To cooperate with someone you can't be, you need to offer something in exchange. That the beaten enemy stays alive is payment enough. Do you mean payment enough for the enemy? Or do you mean payment enough for the goblins? But the enemy is strong to offer to work together, so the goblin stays guarded, can stay on the table, so like a mafia type situation. And if the enemy wishes to eradicate goblinoids, all words are not worth to use, and it's a matter of life and death. So I would use every method possible to save my home with fangs and teeth when it comes down to it. Yeah, that makes sense. Which I think we kind of mapped out. Yeah, like I think they can somewhat recognize that they are othered from other people, if that makes sense. Like, they are their own society, and they are recognizing of that. And the everyone includes their own society. But I don't think that they would be against, like, people... Sorry, I am so tired, dude. I don't think they would be against, certain, groups joining them, or certain peoples joining them. I don't think it would be unusual to find other races here, personally. It would be unusual to everyone outside of the community, I think. It's unusual to only those outside of the community to find that there are not just goblinoids here. I think as well, I think that they would probably, like, there's stories about people, you know, sending their kid off into the forest in history, and just letting nature take its course, because either they can't care for them or what have you. But I think that these goblinoids would take the children in as their own, frankly. It is not unusual for children to become lost or be sent into the jungle with the expectation that they would die, and this community will take in stray children that they find. Yes. And everyone would find it in their nature to protect their society. I also want to talk about travel. Do they travel? And if so, to what extent and to what end? You're giving me so much to work with them on. And if the enemy, okay, I mean, if the goblin can beat you, the strategic value of the beaten enemy does not matter much to them. Strategic value. Do you mean like the community taking in beaten enemies? Is that what you mean? So allow them to stay alive and help their tribe with not much of a payment on their side sounds logical, because why give someone something when they can't fight better? True. Okay. That's an interesting concept. the idea of them being alive being payment enough. I'm gonna edit my OBS real fast so that it can get all of your thingamoling, all of your message. Oh no, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Unlucky. Okay, I might have to. Let me edit this. Properties. Right. 600. There we go. Okay, and now we do a new. There we go. Alrighty. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we got all of the good stuff. So allow them to stay alive and help their tribe with not much of a payment on their side. But I look at it from a viewpoint of power. So if they meet a strong enemy, they would offer them something to cooperate. Local information, coin, items for weaker quote-unquote enemies they found, whatever the strong one wishes to have for their promise to help them. So I feel like this is very much a mafia type mindset. And I don't know if so the idea behind Varshavaan is that at this point, these are the established communities. Of course, there's little smaller communities in between, but for the most part, these are the established communities. So I don't know how much I want this to work like a mafia. I do like the idea of stronger, I kind of want to call them others. I don't really want to call them enemies because I don't know if this group of people would view them as enemies necessarily. But I kind of stronger others, we'll call them others for this. Stronger others that want to fight specifically can often be, what is it sated, I think. Sated, yes, perfect. Be sated by offering, I like the idea of the local information, coin, or items. Offering local information, coin, items, etc. in exchange for I don't want to say protection, but a lack of fighting. A lack of fighting. So it's not like they're being protected by outside sources, but rather that they have a somewhat truce because of what they're giving them. I think Mafia is a bit, my thought pattern, yawn. My thought pattern was more that they try to protect their place, but are open to cooperation. I think Mafia is a bit strong. They would be open for cooperation with others, but would need to be strong enough so they don't strain their own resources. Yes, I agree. Yes. Open for cooperation. Cooperation is first, fighting second. In this community. Travel. I also want to talk religion, which we kind of already decided on Mishakal. This community worships Mishakal the most, as she created their kind. Originally, a peoples made in the image of love and cooperation. Everything and everyone, oops, belongs to everyone. I want to put belongs to in quote. Belongs to everyone. Cooperation, their ideals did not sit well with other races, so they created their own community. So what we're gonna find a lot of in Varshavaan specifically is that a lot of these communities are communities that don't fit anywhere else. The only place that they would the only places that they would probably be that they would probably frequent would be Dakal and maybe Galdrek. Galdrek is a little bit too, I don't want to say alien, but it's a little, it works differently from other places because they do worship the dragons in history, like great dragons in history, rather than the gods themselves. Like, they acknowledge that the gods exist. They're not atheists per se, but they do worship good and evil gods in history. So I think Aldrich would be just a little too alien for them. Not that they wouldn't be welcome, but it would just be a little weird for them. And then Dakal would be more of a place where pretty much every race is, like, totally welcome, I think, personally. And then Varshavaan is a bit more of those, you know, the idea of, essentially people wanting their own communities for their own kinds of people. They just want to not only feel like they belong, but be in a community of people that also feel like them. So yeah, that's the idea of the force of Varshavaan. This community worships Mishkal the most. She created their kind, originally peoples made in the image of God, love and cooperation. Everything and everyone belongs to everyone. Their ideals did not sit well with the other races, so they created their own community based around her ideals. To adopt a weak fighter is not much of a gain for them, but I like when different groups have not the same thought patterns like others. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think the other big one, that's gonna come up is the Yuan Ti. So I definitely want to make theirs a very alien to, I think, our morality. Like, I think most people can look at the goblins and be like, I can understand the draw in this. I can understand why this group of people would like to live this way. But I think the Yuan Ti are going to be a little different because they're just gonna be like very harsh hierarchy. And it's gonna be a little bit rougher than I think the Kumbaya of Herta is going to be. So yes. What I found funny by the deity god Bahamut is that he sometimes walks as an old man with 7 little birds. Yes, his, what are they called? His golden worms that turn into canaries, to the yellow canaries. Caught sometimes a few D&D players off guard who didn't know this. Yes, I love that headcanon. Unfortunately, and I cry about it. In my world, Bahamut is stuck behind the divine gate, so I can't put that there. But if they ever visit Celestia, absolutely, he's just gonna be an old man. He's just gonna be wandering around, and it's gonna be like a test of goodness type situation. But I don't know if any of my players will ever go to Celestia, so we'll see. like a rough, we tried to steal from an old man and he noticed later he has 7 birds around him. Nice. The fun thing about Bahamut is that I did not like the aesthetic of the golden worms because they're basically floating wigglies in the air, which is fine, but I like koalas just a tiny bit more. I like that they have wings, and I think it makes the canaries a little bit more making sense, ish. So I just decided to make them quaddles because the aesthetic, which is the fun part about D&D, is you can just decide things. Alrighty. Later, the old man looked at him with a smile. The rogue made the connection a bit late as the old man started to talk to him politely. That's fun. Okay, let's think about goblins. Why would they travel? They would travel for, crafted goods. I don't imagine that they would be crafted, goods. I would imagine especially metal ones. I would imagine that they would, limited hunting grounds directly surrounding the community. They limit their hunting grounds to directly surrounding the current community. He even gave him a bit of gold because because the failed attempt of the young man amused him. Player, I think I dodged a bullet there. Nice. I love subverting expectations in a way that makes sense. Either because the party at play has a specific goal, like Bahamut in this situation, or because, like, something that makes sense narratively, even though it does subvert expectations. I'm not a big fan of, games where you do something just for shock value, but it doesn't make any sense. I personally am not a huge fan of that. I love games where you draw from strings that you got from the very beginning of the campaign. It just makes it so good, especially if you have players that think, which is a hot commodity in the D&D world. There are so many players who don't think, which is fine. If you want to play a game that you're just going in, you're fighting stuff, you're getting the big bad evil guy, you're just finding out little information here and there, that's fine. I am a fucking nerd, so I like to know things. I like to figure out things. I'm a big fan of mystery, and there's a reason that the game that I've played in, where we've only had like 30 something sessions, 38, 36, 37 sessions, I already have 100 pages of notes. Like, I love that shit, and Bahamut is so much fun. The rogue was done after the second encounter, I guess. That's fun. They travel for crafted goods. They limit their hunting grounds to directly surrounding the community. We may just have to, like, honestly, I'm so exhausted. We may have to only do the goblins. I love this little community that we're building. It's so much fun. I just love the idea of goblins being different from reality. It makes me from like the way they're portrayed in Forgotten Realms, it makes me very, very happy. I'm just gonna copy this just in case like everything crashes or something. I just had a sudden fear that everything would be gone, and I was like, oh. They travel for crafted goods. They limit their hunting grounds to directly surrounding the community. They travel to, I think it's 2 A's to Jugad? Yes, 2 A's. They travel to Jugad, oh, I can't spell. For the most part, for any goods they need. I can't imagine, as a general rule, most of these people, I would imagine they don't leave, they don't stray from those areas mentioned. I would imagine that they aren't big travelers, honestly. I think they probably like their home. They like their home and don't like leaving it. Of course, there is going to be exceptions to this rule, which is where you get PCs for D&D games. But I like what we have so far. All right, let's take a look at this again. Goblins and their kin have a different way of living from the rest. They find stealing, or borrowing as they like to translate it, a very natural path to survival. There is an expectation in this community that your hairbrush will be gone one day and you will take one from your neighbor before you need to assist with the field work that day. Likely the same one stolen from you in the first place. So I wonder if they would have... I think they would have fields. So... they do have limited, farms, farming, especially roots and berries. I don't want to say limited. I want them to have farming. Field work that day. Likely the same one you stolen from you in the first place. They are beings of convenience and a community unlike any other. They are not territorial and have no concept of family. This does not mean that they lack oneness. As many who do not practice the subject would say, it takes a village to raise a child. The children belong to everyone, and the stuff belongs to everyone, and thus everyone regards each other as family in a rather absurd way to those outside of the community. Large, flat housing that can accommodate many people. The majority of the space is likely taken up by bed. There are separate rooms for food and hygiene. Privacy is not much of a concern to goblins in this community, and anything considered to be private is taken into the forest to be dealt with. Omnivorous, not so much hunters, but rather gatherers and scavengers. They are not against taking already dead creatures that are reasonably healthy, of course, that have died in normal ways, such as old age, and repurposing them for food. I want to change the, Alright, they do have farming, especially roots and berries. Social hierarchy. If everyone belongs to everyone, and the stuff belongs to everyone, then the person who cares for and is kindest to the stuff and to everyone is the leader. Ultimately, they don't particularly have a leader, but rather an elder that settles disputes and has the final say. It is unusual to only those outside of the community to find that there are not just goblinoids here. It is not unusual for children to become lost or be sent out into the jungle with the expectation that they would die, and this community will take in stray children that they find. Military or lack thereof. For the most part, I'm just gonna do military. I think I actually want to change this to defense. For the most part, they don't take fights unless they are in danger, but on top of that, they don't believe in honorable fighting. If the enemy is not willing to compromise for the betterment of both societies, then everyone would find it in their nature to protect their society. Stronger others that want to fight can often be sated by offering local information, coin, items in exchange for a lack of fighting. Cooperation is first, fighting second in this community. The wise old one who advises the leaders of them, because to get old you need to have skill. Yeah, exactly. So they are pragmatic gatherers. Yeah, they definitely are gatherers rather than hunters for the most part. I do imagine that they would hunt very small game. I actually do want to put that in there. They do hunt small, what's the word for small animals that have a lot of I can't remember anything. What are words, dude? Small animals that reproduce quickly, called the domestic hamster. Fun fact. Reproduces the quickest. Not what I was looking for, but good to know. A young hamster is capable of reproducing on its own after just 3 to 4 weeks. It's not uncommon for hamster offspring to be born within 16 days of conception. Holy crap! That was a fun fact. Anyways, words are hard. They would not get out of their way to hunt things down, but if they find it on their way, it is worth a shot. Yeah, I would imagine that they have a lot of passive hunting. You know, like basket traps, that kind of stuff. Small animals that reproduce quickly. And they have a lot of passive traps, such as the stick and the basket technique. That's what immediately comes to mind in terms of passive trapping. They are not against taking already dead creatures. Where were we? We were at defense. Yes, for the most part. Oh no, we already finished defense. Travel. They travel for crafted goods, especially metal ones. They limit their hunting grounds to directly surrounding the community, and they travel to Jagad for the most part for any goods they need. As a general rule, most of these people don't stray from those areas mentioned. Table. They like their home and don't like leaving it. Religion. The community worships Mishakal the most, as she created their kind. Originally a peoples made in the image of love and cooperation. Everything and everyone belongs to everyone. Their ideals did not sit well with other races, so they created their own community based around her ideals. I really like what we've created here, honestly. I think this is so fun. This is gonna be, like, if they ever come here, which as a DM you can only hope. But I really like this little community that we've created. It's so much fun creating worlds. I love it. So goblins and their kin have a different way of living from the rest. Hang on. I believe in you. There we go. Yeah, I love this a lot. I can't believe this took so much longer than I thought it would. I do want to do the rest of the communities, but I am dying just a little bit inside and physically. I am so tired, dude. But I also have to get up at 4 p.m. because, and I usually sleep during the day. If you guys didn't know, I work nights. So I also have to work tonight, which is fun. So I need to sleep for at least a little bit, maybe a little sleep. So yeah, thank you, Amon, for participating. I love that you guys are having fun, helping me build out my world. It's so much fun to just think about, like, worlds that don't exist. I just think it's a blast. So I am going to go to sleep and knock the fuck out. Yeah, and I hope you guys have a good one. I guess I will see you later. Bye.